Red Blacks haven't missed the playoffs since their first season in 2014.
Goodbye. Off. It's Winston Rose, and he's going to run away from Jonathan Jennings.
And Ottawa simply can't score.
And boos from the stands coming down onto the field.
Wholesale changes for the Red Blacks, including at head coach.
We'll leave no stone unturned to put us in a position to win championships.
And then they bring in Nick Arbuckle from the Calgary Stampeders.
I just feel a lot of confidence in what I'm capable of doing.
It's sad to see Ottawa back in the same position it was in 2014.
Welcome to another edition of CFL 2020 on TSN. I'm Rod Smith. We still don't know the ifs and whens of a CFL season, but we do know the where. That's Winnipeg, chosen as the hub city this fall if the league is able to play. Until we know more, we're going to carry on with our previews, and today we're talking about the Ottawa Red Blacks. Coming off a bad year that saw them miss the playoffs for the first time since their inaugural season of 2014. And because of it, there was big change starting at head coach as Rick Campbell is replaced by Paul LaPolice, fresh off a Grey Cup win as the Blue Bombers' offensive guru. And he brings in another former colleague of ours, Mike Benavides, to run the defense. They have a new quarterback in Nick Arbuckle and a clean slate in the nation's capital. Here's Matthew Shinetti.
After 3 Grey Cup appearances in the previous 4 seasons, the 2019 season was a disaster for the Ottawa Red Blacks. The league's worst offense and second worst defense forced GM Marshall Desjardins into a full reset. Enter Paul LaPolice, fresh off leading Winnipeg's offense to Grey Cup glory. LaPolice takes the coach's headset back after 7 seasons, and he's joined by a veteran. But the big change in Ottawa is at quarterback. Nick Arbuckle announced himself as the newest quarterback talent in the CFL after a comeback win in Week 3 last season against the BC Lions when he came off the bench for the Calgary Stampeders. And after he signed for the Red Blacks in January, Arbuckle immersed himself in the community in Ottawa. He moved to the city and built relationships with his veteran teammates, including receiver Brad Sinopoli. Consistent quarterback play, the kind the Red Blacks enjoyed so often from Hall of Famer Henry Burris and Trevor Harris, will be key to Ottawa recapturing the East. Rod?
Back with the panel of Matt Dunnigan, Davis Sanchez, Milt Stiegel, and a guy who had a couple of reps, I believe, with the Ottawa Red Blacks back in the day, Henry Burris. Nick Arbuckle, Hank, we saw him for 7 starts with Calgary last year, and pretty impressive, but did you see enough to make you think he is indeed a #1 quarterback in the CFL?
I believe he can become a #1 quarterback, and I think definitely he's more than worthy of the Ottawa signed him due to the fact that he gives you longevity, he gives you health as compared to the guys like Matt Nichols and some other very qualified candidates that were out there. But when you're bringing in a new head coach, you want a young kid that you can groom, that's shown the ability to get it done. When playing with Calgary last year, he was 73% passing, just over a 2-to-1 touchdown to interception ratio with 11-5. But the big difference is here in Ottawa, he won't have the did with Rogers, Bagleton, and company in Calgary. It'll be a lot of young guys around him. So the biggest question that's going to catapult him to a true #1 is, can he take on that leadership role and get guys to follow him as far as with this new team that he's taking?
Yeah, the biggest question, Hank, is the talent around him. I agree. He's proven to be efficient. That's, I think, the Calgary single-season completion percentage you spoke of. He's proven that, and that's why they went and got him. If he was a stock, he'd be a blue-chip stock because he's solid and you know what his floor is. The ceiling, I think, depends, to your point, on the pieces that they surround him with. That's what is still uncertain to me.
You talk about pieces. I backed up Warren Moon my first year in the league, charted every one of his 501 passes and threw 27 balls in my rookie season, then took over the team the next year. And this is basically what's happened to Nick Arbuckle. Arbuckle has taken over a football team and a franchise, and he's got the blessing from his head coach and offensive coordinator, Paul LaPolice. I think that's going to be a match made in heaven. I think it's going to be critical for the young Arbuckle to learn under him, and we know that Paul has the ability to utilize the talent on the football field. Look what happened in Winnipeg last year. I think he's ready, primed, and he's going to seize this opportunity. It's going to be seamless.
I think it's going to be a little bit more difficult than the situation he was put into last year in Calgary. You think about it, regardless how he played, he knew when Bo got healthy, he wasn't going to be the starter. But now this is his team. He's expected to go out there and perform every single game. There's a lot riding on it now. I'm excited for him. We saw what he could do last year in 7 games, but now he doesn't have those same pieces around him. There's a lot of pressure on him. But I like the fact that they did sign him. I think a lot of people thought when Paul LaPolice went to Ottawa that he was going to have now is only 26 years old. So I think that played a big role for them to sign.
And that shows the belief that Lapo had when he saw the film of Arbuckle too, obviously.
We would have been heading into Week 7, so have a look at the top 5 plays of Week 7 in 2019.
Masoli calls his own number. Makes a juke outside. He's going to score a touchdown. Jeremiah Masoli scores.
And on the return, Purifoy breaks away. Lucas Purifoy turns the corner. He'll go in. Untouched. Touchdown. And they called the draw to Powell. William Powell. And he finds a crease. Nobody's going to catch. William Powell. Touchdown. Turn here from Van Langford. Look out. Look out. Ferrero's trying to slow him up. Langford tight ropes it. And he's gone. Ryan Langford, another return. Touchdown. There's a fake reverse and look out. Ryan Langford trying to turn the corner and does. Is he going to do it again? Inside and gone. Ryan Langford has a kick return. Touchdown.
We've all.
What you working on?
Just an app. It's called
They had Henry Burris, then Trevor Harris, but last year Ottawa struggled with the quarterback tandem of Dominic Davis and Jonathan Jennings. So in comes Nick Arbuckle, who quickly made a name for himself in Calgary last year after Bo Levi Mitchell got hurt, throwing for more than 2,000 yards in 7 starts. So is he ready to be a #1 QB? Back to Matthew with Coach Lapo.
You're back in the head coach's chair for the first time in 7 years. You've just won a Grey Cup with the Winnipeg Blue Bombers, but being back in that head coach's chair, building a team again, how's that been?
Yeah, it's been an awesome process. Obviously, when you go from Grey Cup to taking a head coaching job, there's not a lot of time to celebrate and all those things, but I was really enjoying the process of putting together a staff. I really enjoyed the opportunities I had with the OSEG organization. And before this COVID, when we had to come home, the neatest thing was we had about 3 weeks with our staff in the building and just okay, seeing the defensive guys figure out where they're going to dinner or who's driving who into work, just that camaraderie and teamwork that started out as a coaching staff. And I'm really fortunate. I think I've got a great group of guys. And and certainly just the conversations I've had with players have been outstanding, and just trying to do as much as we can remotely of building our culture.
How have you seen Nick Arbuckle, the first time being a starting quarterback? You talk about vision. How have you seen him take your vision on when you can't see him on a practice field and you can't see him in game situations right now?
Yeah, just certainly early on in the conversations with Nick after we had signed him, he wanted guys' numbers to call free agents. He wanted to recruit guys. He also wanted, as soon as guys were hired, were signed on, he was calling them up, trying to talk to them. So you could see his work ethic. And then, he was in the building before we went home, and sure enough, he had a notebook open every day, and he had a playbook, and he was studying stuff. So, a hardworking guy that, was very diligent, very detailed and organized. And that's what you need in the quarterback position. You can't really have a guy who's, I'm kind of figuring it out as they go along. So, he certainly puts the work in, and those are the type of quarterbacks I like, guys who just want to work.
Yes, Ottawa definitely needs to improve on offense, but it's the same story on the other side of the ball. The Red Blacks ranked near the bottom of every defensive category in 2019 as well. So that's the challenge ahead for two men who last worked together when they were with us in studio. As we hear more from the guys inside the booth, Dwayne Ford and Glenn Suter.
Well, Suits, many changes to the Ottawa coaching staff from last season. Faces that are new to Ottawa, but certainly not new to the CFL.
Yeah, the Ottawa Red Blacks, Dwayne, are in great shape when it comes to their coaching staff. Together, Paul LaPolice and Mike Benavides have a combined 40 years of CFL experience. They know the X's and O's of the game very well. We've seen that many times. But they're also men of great character. When it comes to Coach Lapo, the offensive innovation may be the best in the modern era. A real simple example of that was last year in Winnipeg and how he uses pre-snap motion. He has multiple players moving before the snap of the ball. Now, that sounds pretty fundamental because unlimited motion is right there in the CFL rule book, but he uses it better than anyone. Mike Benavides, also an innovator, and has a player-first style that really resonates with today's professional athlete. Keep in mind that both of these guys have head coaching experience. Benavides worked under Wally Buono in BC. Lapo in 2011 took the Bombers to the Cup as a head coach. So both have been involved in the draft. They both understand the ratio. They have handled neg lists, the logistics of camp, travel, game day, and together have combined for 5 Grey Cup rings as assistant coaches. So they know how to win. Dwayne, both coaches, great architects. I'm looking forward to seeing what they do with their personnel in Ottawa.
Yeah, and I'm especially looking forward to seeing what they do with that personnel on offense, where they had a lot of problems last year. And the numbers of Brad Sinopoli kind of characterize their struggles very well. 44 fewer catches, almost 50% less yardage than the year before. And I want to take a look at a couple of plays to demonstrate why. So let's start with a clip from 2018. You've got Sinopoli working in tandem with Greg Ellingson, a veteran guy. Even running something as innocuous as a wide side flat, Ellingson is viewed as enough of a threat that the corner won't slough off of him. That creates space behind him for Sinopoli to get open on the corner route for a big gain. But now watch how last season, an experienced corner in Nick Marshall lets a short side go route run completely free to sit on Sinopoli's out. With less established receivers around him, Brad gets less space. And now this is a factor of quarterbacking as well, issues, predictability, and a lack of creativity in the offense. These are all things that Paul LaPolice has to look to resolve with this Ottawa offense going forward. But as many questions as there are on offense, at least the special teams look like they're in pretty good shape, Suits.
Well, we really should mention who their special team coach is. It's Bob Dice, and he has almost 20 years of CFL experience and brings 2 Grey Cup rings to that process.
Guys, we've already talked about Hamilton and Montreal in CFL 2020, the 2 playoff teams from last year, with the Ticats clearly being a front-runner if there's a season. So, Ches, where do you put these Ottawa Red Blacks who were last in the East last year?
I guess this franchise and new staff is as certain as you could have on an uncertain new staff, if that makes sense. Paul LaPolice, you heard him discussing the fun he's having putting his coaching staff together. This is an established staff. He's got 5 guys on the staff with head coaching experience. Mike Benavides as his defensive coordinator, been around this league for decades. And then his offensive coordinator is pretty darn good too, fellas, isn't he? And that's himself, Paul LaPolice. So there's a lot of certainty in this organization. As you come into a new season, you don't know what to expect. This team, I feel like I know who they are because of what we've seen in the past. It's just going to depend on how these pieces produce.
Well, you talk about certainty in the coaching staff, and that's important. I mean, you talk about those 3 coordinators. Coach Dice, a special teams coordinator. He's been coaching for almost 20 years. Coach Benny, he's been around for 20 years. Paul LaPolice, head coach / offensive coordinator. He's been around forever. So that's going to bode well for him. What's not going to bode so well is, and I think Henry spoke with this earlier, is that young team. I mean, I know this is just a training camp roster, but they have 34 guys on that training camp roster who are 24 and younger. I know younger guys seem to have more energy, but they don't have the other E, and that's experience. So that coaching staff is really going to have to play a big role if this team is going to have success. I mean, let's look at it last year. They were horrible. I mean, you look at all the stats you want to, the 2 most important stats were points and points given up, and they were last with scoring points and last in giving up points. So they have some work to do, but that coaching staff, if they do have some success, will be a big reason for it.
Yeah, Milt, I believe that their cupboard's fairly dry there and empty. Davis, I love the point about the head coaching experience and the fabulous pedigree that they have in the coaching ranks, and they're going to have to tap into all of that because they have a young football team, as Milt, as you've mentioned, and with a shortened season, basically a 10-day mini training camp is what I'm hearing is projected as the scenario for moving forward. It's going to be awfully difficult for those rookies to make an impact. You're going to have to rely on veteran players, and there's just not a lot of veteran players there in that red-black team. So I think they're on the bottom looking up right now, Rod.
Yeah, 100%, Matty. I'm right with you because, I mean, along with Toronto, I think that they still have to earn their stripes because, you know, they went out and signed a number of guys. But I think for Ottawa, defensively, with Mike Benavides and the fact that they incurred and signed Cleon Lang, to me, is probably the most underrated player, impactful player in this league, and also bringing over Abdul Kenna, both guys who were part of the 2016 Grey Cup champions, to just bring that culture back into that locker room. Because with all the youth last year, and we saw, and especially Ottawa fans saw it, the fact when you have a young coaching staff offensively mixed with young players, it's going to be a disaster. And just as you guys mentioned, with the shortened training camp and the shortened season, you need guys that are impactful right away, to have that experience and that knowledge of how to play the game, guys that you can just insert right away. Fortunately for Ottawa on offense, they may not have it, but hopefully their defense can be an anchor for this team until that offense can come around and really start to understand and be able to execute the way that Coach Paul LaPolice needs them to.
Up next, the all-time roster for the CFL in Ottawa, a list that includes members of the Red Blacks and the glory days of the old Ottawa Rough Riders. Back after this. For William Powell and the Rough Riders, Week 7 last season would be a memorable one. Looking to even the record at 3-3, the running back could not be contained.
And they called the draw to Powell, and he finds a crease. Nobody's going to catch. William Powell, touchdown. Huge day for William Powell.
Running for 146 yards on 21 carries, Powell's 3 touchdowns set the tempo going forward. Come August, Saskatchewan would not lose a single game. They are the Red Blacks, and in 6 years, they have certainly carved their own place in Ottawa sports history. Before that, you may recall, the city had the very forgettable Renegades, who could not do what this team has done, that is provide a worthy link to the better days of the old Ottawa Rough Riders, who were around for more than a century until their demise nearly 24 years ago. We've considered them all in choosing Ottawa's all-time CFL roster. After winning 2 Grey Cups in 5 years in Toronto, head coach Frank Clair moved to Ottawa and captured 3 more titles. Nicknamed the Professor for his ability to identify and develop talent, his 147 career wins ranks 3rd in CFL history, and his 27 postseason victories tops them all. The greatest Canadian player in history is the quarterback for Ottawa's all-time team. The pride of Hamilton, Russ Jackson was 3 times the CFL's most outstanding player, 4 times the league's top Canadian, and a 3-time Grey Cup champion. Jackson is both a member of the Hall of Fame and the Order of Canada. Playing both offensive and defensive tackle, Kay Vaughn enjoyed a stellar 12-year career in which he was a 7-time Eastern All-Star and twice recognized as the league's most outstanding lineman. Joining him are fellow Hall of Famer and 4-time Grey Cup champion Mo Racine, 2-time most outstanding offensive lineman Rudy Phillips, 4-time All-Star Kevin Powell, and Sir Vincent Rogers, who was the league's top lineman in 2015. Hall of Famer Dave Thielen tops all Ottawa running backs with 6, featuring 3 straight 1,000-yard seasons. During the Rough Riders' 1960 title run, Thielen led the CFL in rushing. Teammate Ron Stewart, who holds the CFL single-game rushing record with 287 yards, combined with Thielen to form a devastating 1-2 punch. In his 7 seasons in Ottawa, tight end Tony Gabriel was a 6-time CFL All-Star, 3-time Most Outstanding Canadian, and the Most Outstanding Player in 1978. He is Ottawa's all-time leader with 7,484 receiving yards and 2nd in receptions. None more memorable than the catch in the dying seconds of the 1976 Grey Cup. Whit Tucker's career average of 22.4 yards per catch is a CFL record. And the Buds, 2015 East Final hero Greg Ellingson and Ottawa receptions king Brad Sinopoli are reunited again in the all-time receiving corps. On October 19, 2018, Lewis Ward split the uprights from a career-long 52 yards to set a pro football record with his 45th consecutive field goal. His astonishing 92% success rate is tops in league history. The only kicker to win Most Outstanding Canadian, Jerry Organ, slots in at punter, and special team standout Deontay Spencer set a CFL record with 496 all-purpose yards in a single game. Although sacks weren't officially recorded until his 2nd season in the CFL, Greg Marshall still sits atop Ottawa's career sack list with 71. A 4-time Eastern All-Star and 2-time League All-Star, Marshall was named the CFL's most outstanding defensive player in 1983. Second to Marshall in sacks, Lloyd Lewis was a 3-time Eastern All-Star. Despite standing just 6 feet tall, Billy Joe Booth was a dominant defensive end. And Halifax's Wayne Smith was twice a League All-Star and Grey Cup champion. One of Ottawa's most iconic football figures, Jerry Soupy Campbell, was an all-star linebacker in 7 of his 8 years in the nation's capital. His speed, relentless effort, and high football IQ combined to help the Rough Riders win 2 Grey Cups and land Campbell in the Hall of Fame. His teammate and fellow Hall of Famer Ken Lehman was a 4-time League All-Star. And in 1992, Angelo Snipes set an Ottawa record with 20 quarterback sacks. A 2-way player in both the NFL and CFL, George Brancato was an all-star defensive back, helping Ottawa win the 1960 Grey Cup. Already named an all-time Alouette, Gene Gaines was even better in Ottawa, making 3 league all-star teams. Joe Poirier is first in Ottawa's career interception list with 46 picks, and Dick Adams was a CFL all-star in 4 of his 5 seasons with the Rough Riders. Eddie Emerson was an influential figure in the Ottawa football community for over 50 years. After a stellar 22-year career, he served as club president and was Bob Simpson was an all-star at 4 different positions and remains the team's career touchdown leader. And at a time in Ottawa football history when failure expansion team to Grey Cup champion in only 3 years. And Matty, when I look at that list, 2 eras stand out. The old Ottawa Rough Riders were great in the 60s and 70s, won the Grey Cup 5 times in a 17-year span, and then not much after that until Henry and the Red Blacks came along.
Yeah, and it's no wonder. You know, you look at those 2 iconic players you're talking about, Russ Jackson in the early era and Henry in this last era of Grey Cup champion caliber football teams. And you got to have a guy. And obviously they had one, Russ Jackson. He's a 7-time Shenley Award winner. He won the MOP in the league 3 times and the Most Outstanding Canadian 4 times. Hank, he's won 3 Grey Cups himself, and he's been an MOP twice and MOP in the Grey Cup. I don't know how many times. I think a couple more times. So you got to have a guy. And they had quality people. That set the bar. And everybody's been out, has been trying to live up to that since then. But when you have a Russ Jackson and you have a Henry Burris, it's easy to understand why you win championships.
And I think also the guy who I definitely don't want to discount, you know, just what he was able to do, his impact of adding value and equity to the Red Blacks was Rick Campbell. I mean, for him to go to that many Grey Cups in just only 5-6 years of being a part of this organization, to take this team to 3 Grey Cups and win 1, I mean, it was pretty phenomenal due to the fact that, you know, he was a leader, very even-keeled, and a guy who really never wanted that type of attention. He wanted it all to be shined on his players. But to me, if they're going to put another statue up, of course, along with Frank Clair here at TD Place, to me, Rick Campbell is definitely one to consider due to the fact of the success that he had.
I want to talk about a guy from that 73 Rough Riders team, that defensive line. They called it capital punishment. It was Wayne Smith.
Yeah.
Wayne Smith, guys, one of the leaders of that team. He was a Canadian. His story hasn't been told often enough, and I wasn't familiar with it. But he's a Canadian defensive end who didn't play high school football, didn't play college football, and became an all-star in the CFL. He was runner-up for Defensive Player of the Year. He's passed away in 2016. Wayne Smith passed away. But a guy whose story is almost unimaginable, to not play high school football or college football and become a great impact player at a non-import position at defensive end. Wayne Smith of the Capital Punishment, a Grey Cup champion, 73 Rough Riders team.
Wow. Well, the gentleman I want to speak on, he was on the coaching staff when I was in Winnipeg for some years. He wasn't my coach directly. He was a defensive coordinator. He's not only on this all-time team, he's also, along with Davis, on Montreal's all-time team. That's how great of a player he was. He spent half of his 16 years with the Rough Riders and half with Montreal. And this man was a spectacular player. 1994 Hall of Fame inductee, over 40 interceptions. And he actually, in Montreal, he was a coach and a player at the same time. And Gene Gaines, if anyone knows him, he's just a special person.
And it really was. I remember, hey, I'm an old Ottawa Rough Rider fan. I grew up in Ottawa. I remember those glory years in the 60s and 70s, and Russ Jackson was my hero. That's our show for this week. Next week, we focus on Edmonton, a team in the process of changing its name, but they remain one of the most successful franchises in the history of the CFL, trying to get back to championship form under new head coach Scott Milanovich. That's next time on